the speakers today. I actually was motivated by my good friend Lori, who reverse mortgages from the lawyers sector. We had to stay a little bit ahead of the curve on this, and they came in, oh gosh, I don't remember, but there came a point in time, frankly, where I refused to do them without getting a waiver from my clients because they were impossible to understand. And what was suspect to me with reverse mortgages is the settlement agents came to the house. And back at the beginning, there'd be, hey, how you doing? And there'd be a pile of papers this high. And I know when you all have financed or refinanced or purchased your homes, you sit and read the documents. Like you can all tell me what the penalty period is on your first mortgage and what happens if you're late, because you sit there and you stuff the chocolate in your face of the settlement company and you'll sign anything they put in front of you at a settlement. Well, for reverse mortgages, they were coming to your house and the papers were this high. Nobody understood them. They were problematic, and they were really remedies of last resort for elders who were desperate to stay in their homes. They've evolved incident to federal regulations, some state regulations, and then the light went off because the world has changed in terms of investment portfolios, in terms of investment portfolios being devastated, in terms of people looking for other buckets to finance their lives. And then Lori moved from, where were you before? She was someplace interesting, and then moved to Middleburg. There aren't a whole lot of poor people in Middleburg, I don't believe. And so I kept running into her, and she was telling me how good business was in Middleburg, and I thought it was fairly creative that she was really launching into a new aspect of reverse mortgages, of people with wealth developing their investment portfolios in terms of utilizing reverse mortgages. I met Mary outside a Grows meeting, and she came up to me and basically attacked me and said, "You know who I am?" And I said, "No, I don't, but you're fairly aggressive, and I like aggressive people." And she told me that she never loses a reverse mortgage. She will make the deal happen in terms of difficult cases, and I have difficult clients, as I'm sure Bob does, and she's taken on some very, very rough cases with disparate families, conflicting people, having to keep elders in the home. Aggressive, good, gets the job done. So and forgive me, I know there are other reverse mortgage people, and you'll just have to forgive me on this one, but I chose two of the best to talk to you today. And the goal is twofold. First of all, that you walk out of here with some knowledge about a reverse mortgage, and I think that's what got you out of bed, because you're really not here to market. And the second piece is that you understand, that was the joke part, and you understand, wow, okay, right. Karen is here, by the way. She's our new paralegal at the Elder and Disability Law Center, and so be nice to me today, okay? All right, I made her get out of bed at 4:30 in the morning. In any event, we're here to learn, A, about the base of reverse mortgages, how they work, how you can use them not only for your clients, but how you can use them for yourself. And the second level is I'm going to ratchet it up. I don't suspect there are a lot of people here at the poverty line or below, so for your purposes, you're going to get some sense of how you can use the reverse mortgage as part of your investment portfolio. And I got two good people here because they responded to me. They put together an outline. You came in from Warrington, and you came in from California. Texas. Oh, you flew in from Texas this morning. Yeah, she took the red eye to be here. So I know you guys have formatted. Lori, I'm going to give her the, I'm going to give it in honor of your coming in from Texas and taking the red eye. Didn't you take the red eye?
I did.
Okay, yeah. So I'm going to let you go first. These guys have the format. You know the drill. Interrupt them if they get boring. Ask questions. Don't deliver a speech, by the way. If you've got a question, ask a question. But no speeches when you stand up to talk. And for your purposes, identify who you are so you can mark it when you stand up to ask a question. Ladies, it's all yours.
Good morning. My name is Mary Loven. I am not as aggressive as Robert said I am, so don't be afraid to talk to me or have your clients talk to me. I'm just going to introduce myself right now because we've put together an outline. Also, just want to give the disclaimer, I did, as Robert said, come in on the red eye, got home at about 2, and have been up since 5. So if I have a brain lapse at any point, I apologize. But just a brief introduction, I have been doing reverse mortgages. I'm going on my 9th year. I started out with Bank of New York, which was sold to Everbank, which was sold to MetLife. I was with MetLife for several years until this past May when they exited the industry. I'm now with One Reverse Mortgage. I did this for about 6 years in New Jersey. I took a leave of absence in 2008 to go work in West Africa, not doing reverse mortgages, obviously, for about 1.5 years. And when I came back, relocated down to, I'm in Silver Spring, Maryland right now. So I've been down here about 1.5 years and doing reverse mortgages all this time. So I'll let Lori introduce herself.
My name is Lori McNaughton, and I have a very different background. I did not start off in mortgages. I didn't start off in lending. I actually started off my career as a chemistry tutor, chemistry teacher, so anyone who needs to bone up on their periodic table, see me afterward. From there, I actually went to work for a lobbyist group. I was a technical editor and a writer for a lobbyist group. Then I went to work for a law firm in 2001. And oh, don't tap the podium, okay? It's Braille, SOS, torture. And it was while I was working for the law firm, actually, and I had a couple things that I was doing actually on the side that I got a call from, at that point, Wells Fargo, and that was how I had my introduction even into reverse mortgages. And the funny thing was, I'm such a skeptic and such a researcher that I thought, I am not pursuing this any farther until I see what in the heck a reverse mortgage is. It smells bad. Anything with the word reverse in it is kind of scary unless we're talking about reversing the aging process. And then it sounds not so good, doesn't it? But, or not so bad. But I did, once I got into the federal congressional record here, I was at a law firm, had a computer with Westlaw and LexisNexis right on it, researched the living bejabbers out of the product, and did indeed go to that interview and really fell in love with the product, and I've been doing it ever since. I did start off with Wells Fargo. When Wells Fargo exited the business, I went over to Middleburg Bank, and as Robert points out, it's true. There are not a lot of people pushing the poverty line in Loudoun County, wealthiest county in the U.S., and so we'll talk about that and how reverse mortgage fits in with that. So, Mary, would you like me to go ahead and introduce just the basics of the reverse mortgage at this point? You're going to hear the most trimmed down version of how a reverse mortgage works that you've ever heard. I've sat through so many reverse mortgage talks where people are diving for the doors like, oh my God, don't I have to stand in line at the DMV? There's got to be some place I have to be. And we are not going to have people diving for the door. So I'm going to give you a very trimmed down version on how a reverse mortgage works. And just bear in mind that there's much more to it than this, but we'll take that offline or in questions afterward. But it's what I want you to envision is a pickle jar. One of the great big old-fashioned pickle jars where you had to reach your whole arm down in there to get that pickle. That pickle jar is your home. That pickle jar is your home. And over the course of 30 years, typically, you're penny by penny, you're putting pennies in that pickle jar, and you're filling it up. And after 30 years, you've filled that pickle jar up with pennies, and the lid is screwed on. But it hasn't just been a static pickle jar, has it? In most cases, for most of history, that pickle jar passively has grown and is filled up with equity. It's gotten more valuable than just the value of the pennies that you put in. So you pile that full of pennies, the pickle jar grew, the lid's on, pretty much end of story. You own your home outright. But now you're 65 years old, you're watching your 203K drop, you're watching your investment portfolio kind of looking shaky right now, and you really need another bucket of funds to draw on. So what a reverse mortgage does, in effect, is it takes the lid off the pickle jar, those are your pennies after all, and allows you to take out penny by penny, or 10 pennies, or a scoopful of pennies as needed. And you don't pay that back. It is a line of credit, but you're not paying that back. When you no longer need that home is either sold or the kids pay back what you've taken out and keep the home. Typically, the home is sold and the home repays whatever you've taken out. However many pennies remain in the jar goes straight to the kids. The bank does not have any role in equity sharing. So Anything left in the home goes to the kids, the heirs, or to the estate. So there's always a layer of pennies that remain in the bottom of the pickle jar. You can't just dump out all the pennies in the pickle jar. There has to be an equity buffer of pennies that stay in the bottom of the pickle jar, but the rest you can access. You can take all of those if you want. All those that you do have access to, you can take out all at once in a lump sum, or you can scoop them out little bit by little bit. And so that is absolutely the quickest overview you're ever going to hear on a reverse mortgage. But like I said, we'll take more technical questions offline.
Lori?
Yeah.
Question?
Sure.
Skip Tash with dollars. Question: if a home is worth, let's say $1 million, you still owe $500,000 on it. Can you still take a reverse mortgage?
Good question. Absolutely yes. Absolutely yes. Yes. This past month I closed 3 that came in over $1.2 million. In each case, they were what was called short to close. My lending limit at the federal level is $625,500. So you have a $1.2 million home. I'm only allowed to look at it as though it's a $625,500 home. The rest of that equity stays in the home. But mind you, if somebody has a $500,000 mortgage on it, they don't have a 50% equity position in that $625,500. Are you all following me? Okay. So I can only lend against a home value of $625,500. So no matter how valuable your home is, I can't lend against the whole value. I can only lend against $625,500. But I can't lend you all that money. I only can lend you a percentage of that money based on your age. So what happens when I can get this person, because of their age, I can get them, say, $300,000, but that still leaves them short to close by $200,000. They can bring to the table that $200,000, and I closed 3 just exactly like that this past month out in Middleburg.
So tax-wise, what happens with the tax?
Taxes, I do know. I'm not allowed to address that. Actually, is what I do is I say, see your tax advisor. You do need to talk to a tax advisor when you're doing something like this. Absolutely, your tax attorney. Typically, as far as if you're taking money out of the home, it's completely tax-free. When you're bringing money to the table and taking it out from under management, typically to do that, you do need to talk to your tax advisor, your wealth manager on that. But yes, there's no question about it. You can make it work for these high-end homes. Why would somebody want to do that? Well, in all 3 cases, the profile was almost identical. They were all newly widowed. How did they end up with a $500,000 mortgage on this home that they've owned for 55 years? All 3 cases, exactly the same. Husband, end-stage disease, renal failure, end-stage renal failure, and 2 of them, the wife or the husbands and wives about 5 years ago took out home equity line of credit to re-outfit the home with, handicap accessible bathrooms and ramps and all this kind of stuff, purchased specialized vans, motorized wheelchairs. So they ended up with this huge mortgage. And of course, what happened? We all know the end of this story. He dies. He dies. Now she's got a $500,000 mortgage on the property, and she's really struggling with it. So she says, heck yeah, I can get rid of a $7,000 a month mortgage. In one of my cases, that's $7,000 a month mortgage that we retired for her. She wants to die in that home. She doesn't want to leave it. She said, if I can get rid of this darn thing and have that home, now that I don't have a monthly mortgage payment on for $200,000, heck yeah, I'm taking that. So yes, absolutely it can work if they've got the money, and we have to source the living bejabbers out of it. We can't just say, $200,000 came out of nowhere. But yes, you can make it work.
Bring more money to the table.
Exactly, because they have to be able to fill up that pickle jar until it's a minimum of 50% full.
Right. Oh.
And the size of that pickle jar, for my intents and purposes, is only worth $625,500. So I have to get it to the point where it's 50% full, so that we can then take that and pay off whoever holds the forward mortgage on it. Great question. Great question. Maybe a little more technical than I'd otherwise.
Let me ask Mary a question if I could.
Absolutely.
Mary, could you talk to us a bit about the different ways you can take money out in a reverse mortgage? And
Sure.
Trends that you see happening with reverse mortgages?
Sure, absolutely. First of all, the conversation we're having right now is extremely relevant. the reason that I was away this weekend, I was actually at an FPA conference. Is everybody familiar with the FPA is? Okay. FPA stands for Financial Planning Association. So do we have any financial planners in the room? Okay. Do you guys have your CFP designation? Financial planners who have this designation are required to get a certain number of hours of continuing education. And the reason I was so happy that Robert brought up this discussion is because, and I know you're kind of steering the conversation, that there's a really, really big shift going on in the industry right now. And we say it's a shift from needs-based to wants-based clients. Do you guys use that expression?
No, not
Okay. Well, it's really, all that we're saying with that is it's a shift from people who maybe need to do a reverse mortgage to make ends meet to a type of client who doesn't have to do this, but they're choosing to do it as part of a greater financial plan. So I'm going to answer first the question about how the person can take their money. Now, to go back to what Lori said, when we're qualifying somebody for a reverse mortgage, we're taking their property value up to a maximum of $625,000. So anything above that, we're not even looking at. And then based on the current interest rate and the age of the youngest individual, they're qualifying for a percentage of their property value. So let's just say that, to pick really simple numbers, let's say you've got a $100,000 property and they're qualifying for 65% of the property value. Well, that's $65,000. But there's a number of ways that money can be taken. It can be left in a line of credit of $65,000, which can be drawn on as needed. And by the way, a nice feature of the line of credit with a reverse mortgage is that it actually grows over time. So whereas with a home equity loan, that $65,000 will remain $65,000, with a reverse mortgage, that's actually going to increase over time. And it's going to increase at the same rate that the client is charged interest. So if there's a 5% interest rate charged against the monies that have been taken, there will be 5% growth rate in the line of credit. The other options are to take a lump sum, which would be used to either pay off a mortgage or for other uses. And then the third option is that you can do a monthly payment. And that monthly payment can be done either as a term, where we say, okay, this person needs X number of dollars, $5,000 a month because they need in-home health care and that's what it's going to cost them. But then that money may only last a certain number of years. Or they can set up what we call a tenure, which is not 10-year, it's spelled Tenure, which is like a life payment. It's not an annuity, but it works similar to an annuity in the sense that it would be a guaranteed stream of income for their lifetime. Now, to answer the other question, there's a really, really big shift right now. And people like myself and Lori and a couple others in the room right now who do reverse mortgages, who have been in the industry a little bit longer, are seeing a big change because, to Robert's point, even as short as 10 years ago, financial planners didn't want to recommend this, elder law attorneys did not want to recommend this, CPAs did not want to recommend this because nobody, and I don't think anybody in this room would recommend something that they don't understand. I have clients ask me about products all the time, and I tell them the only thing I'm an expert in is a reverse mortgage. So I can give you my opinion, but that's all that it is, and I can't give you an expert opinion on Medicare and things, or Medicaid and things of that nature. What we're seeing finally is, because we've got the baby boomers coming of age, and what are some, if I can just, because I hate having a monologue and it's a little bit depressing being up here seeing everybody's blank faces. What are some differences, because we're all working with older people, what are some differences with the baby boomers who are coming into retirement right now and maybe Depression era babies who have, aged in place and are now in their late 80s? Financially, is there a difference between them? And especially, yes? People are nodding their head yes, but nobody wants to give an opinion. Robert, what do you think?
I was reading my next thing. I'm sorry.
Come on. See, you're a bad influence on the audience. Yes.
I think the two things that you see is that the baby boomers who are retiring now don't have pensions, and so they're retiring based on their own savings. And because 401k plans came out in the 70s, there wasn't a whole lot of education. In fact, people still aren't well educated on saving for retirement and tax implications and how much they need. And so they're just really struggling because they're in the stock market, they're investing for themselves, and their portfolios are just like this, and they're just scared because they don't have enough money.
Yes, that's perfect. That's spot on. Yes?
Chuck Thornton. I'm with Friendship Terrace, Seabury Resources up in Northwest D.C. We're an affordable senior community. I'm finding more and more people at 62 which is minimum age, coming just to find an affordable apartment. Forget that it's a senior community.
Right.
It's an affordable apartment. The other side to a reverse mortgage for those from Depression era, had a couple worked with a couple years ago, had a condo, got a reverse mortgage. Those pickles, Lori, that you mentioned that are to stay in the jar, those pickles disappeared. This person was totally in debt, underwater, was able to work out with the financial institution a way that, yes, they wouldn't be declared foreclosure. But it was, they thought, fine, we'll borrow, I'll still have these pickles left. What happens when the market
Sure.
goes away and those pickles are gone?
Yeah, I'm going to answer that in 1 second, because first I just want to address what you said, and then I'll address that. And I don't want to also hog the conversation, so I'm going to make a couple of quick points, and then I'll pass this off to Lori. First of all, there's three big differences with baby boomers as opposed to older people who have aged in place, at least from my perspective and what I see. Number one, they're less prepared. Baby boomers did not like to save money the same way that, you know, people who grew up during the Depression were. Number two, they're going to live longer. We've got longer life expectancy. And number three, they have a higher standard of living. They're not living as simply as some other people. So now we've got these three factors where, think of how hard it is, even for people who grew up in the Depression, to pay all their bills. And they've maybe saved a little bit more, they live more simply, and they're not living as long. So a lot of financial planners who have ignored this product for a long time are finally saying, you know what? I would never ignore a $500,000 401k that you had put to the side when I'm doing your financial plan. So why would I ignore this $500,000 pickle jar or a piggy bank, which is your house? That's a huge asset, and for a lot of people, it's their biggest asset. To answer your question really quickly, and then Robert's really quickly, and then pass it to Lori, these loans are all FHA insured. And part of the closing fees and a part of the ongoing interest, which are financed in and paid back at the end, is an FHA insurance premium, which ensures that you can never pass a debt onto your heirs. So the reason that Lori mentioned that you can't borrow all the pennies, there's this little cushion we keep there, that's to cover the interest that accrues. That's based on a calculation that is done by brilliant people and backed by FHA. We're saying we have faith that between the amount of equity you've stored plus our projections of your life expectancy and the way that property will appreciate, there will be enough to pay that back. But in cases when we're wrong, just like with homeowners insurance, maybe 1 out of 50 people ends up having to cash in on that loss, and FHA will pay out the difference. Couple of quick things, because I really want to mention that there's still a ton of people who use a reverse mortgage for traditional uses, paying off a first mortgage, paying for in-home health care, paying their taxes. But for the first time, we're seeing some wildly creative uses, and I'll list a couple quickly, and I know that Lori has some examples of clients that she's worked with to do this creatively. The three biggest that I'm seeing, and by the way, my explanation is not intended to make you all financial experts. It's really just to give you enough information to have you think outside of the box with regards to a reverse mortgage. One example that I've worked with several clients on is there are plenty of people around here in a $600,000 property, but they've got kids who live in North Carolina, or they go down every winter to Florida. And rather than renting a property every time they go down for 3-4 months out of the year, many people will take $300,000 equity out of that primary residence and purchase their winter home. Now, you've literally just displaced the equity. You've pulled equity out of one asset, you're purchasing equity outright, and in many cases, in addition to the fact that on the primary residence, we've got a mortgage now that is accruing interest, so you may be losing equity on that end. Now you've got another property that hopefully will appreciate over time. So in many cases, that can offset the money that you're losing, and you're no longer going to just be giving away money and renting. So that's a very common use that I've seen. Perhaps something that's a little bit more financially savvy, and I'll try to keep this as simple as possible, but Robert touched on this initially. People's investment portfolios are really hurting, and as Americans, we have a very short-sighted way of looking at things where if the market's bad for 2 years, that's detrimental, and we have to start coming up with solutions where a 2-year blip in the market is going to happen again. I mean, that's just inevitable. It's just a matter of when. there is the Journal of Financial Planning, where they publish actual scholarly articles. They're not opinion pieces, but they're based on data and research. And there are two huge financial planners, Harold Evensky and John Salter was the other, who published an article in the use of a reverse mortgage line of credit to draw upon in a bear market in order to extend the life of that portfolio. So what that means in simple terms is, just the way people don't want to sell their house right now when the value is low, people don't want to sell their stocks when they're low, because not only are you selling something that you're not going to recover, but you've got to sell off more of that in order to get the same, money that you're getting from before. So in this paper that they published, I think it was this past June, and I'll be happy to send it to any of you if you're interested. Not that it's that interesting, it's full of a lot of graphs and numbers, but there are many planners who are starting to recommend to clients putting, there's a new reverse mortgage called a saver. It is the same exact thing as a regular reverse mortgage. The difference is you can borrow slightly less money, but your upfront closing fees are greatly reduced. So it's the same cost essentially as doing like a home equity loan. So many planners are recommending, just the way a financial planner might say, get a home equity loan in place. They're suggesting a reverse mortgage, and then you can draw on that money for a year or two until your portfolio recovers. And in many cases, once it does recover, you can even pay back the majority of the reverse mortgage, or not. That'll be up to you and your planner.
Let me ask Lori to respond. By coincidence, I happen to have the Salter article with me. She saw his eyes across the room.
That's the other article I sent you.
I wanted to do the transition smoothly. The Salter article, and this is downtown Middleburg, talking about the, it's called, what they call about, and I'd like you to, it's called a home equity conversion mortgage, or HECM. And the importance of effective distribution strategies is rapidly increasing as 78 million baby boomers approach retirement over the next decade. The diminished role of defined benefit plans, longer life expectancy, escalating healthcare costs, and poor equity returns over the last decade are just a few of the issues confronting retirees. That's probably everybody in this room, okay? Except for people who work for Sunrise. Okay, retirees that create a challenging retiring landscape. Advisors use a mix, and we have investment advisors here, so join in, but keep your comments short. Advisors use distribution strategies and financial products to manage these risks. Costly products, market volatility, and the opportunity costs associated with cash holdings represent a few obstacles with these strategies. Fortunately, an affordable reverse mortgage, the home equity conversion mortgage,
HECM, there you go.
HECM, Saver, that's what, okay, the home equity conversion Saver was made available in October 2010. This non-cancelable line of credit that borrowers control, hence the reference to standby, and that can be paid back at any time without a penalty, may provide a significant risk management solution to practitioners and retirees. Can you lead us that direction?
Great, absolutely, absolutely. And I'm going to kind of transition into that. In your folder, I actually have written up little pieces that are based on both case studies, real life scenarios, and drawing from both of these articles, both the Salter article and the Evansky article, which were very scholarly. Having come from a chemistry background, one of my big beefs with reverse mortgage were, where's the statistical analysis? Where are the hard numbers? We're all seeing, existentially, we're seeing how this is improving people's cash positive position. Where are the numbers? I want to be able to point to the hard numbers. This past June, those numbers came out. And I want to take just a second and address Chuck's question, because it's a great question. Was it Chuck, right? What happened to those pennies? What happened to those pennies? The home can go down in value. We all know that. I'm out in Fauquier County. My house at one point was down 50% in value. That's a big wallop. Suppose I'd had a reverse mortgage against that. And let's say I had taken out $400,000 when my house was $1.2 million, and now let's say my house is worth $400,000. Let's say thermonuclear war struck. My house is worth $90,000. Oh, Pacer, I'm driving poor Abby crazy here. All right. Frozen in place. My doctor asked me what I did for exercise, and I said pace. But So now I owe more than my home is worth. And mind you, my home is paying back the debt. How can my home pay back the debt if my home can't pay back the debt? How does this happen? This is funny math. It's that mortgage insurance premium that everybody pays up front by federal mandate. It's gone into a mortgage insurance pool. If I am underwater and I need to get out of that home, the feds square up with the lender. You cannot get underwater on a reverse mortgage. It could be I've got no equity in it, absolutely, but I owe nothing, my kids owe nothing, my heirs in my estate owe nothing, and the lender's not left short. So that's the answer to that question. Can there be more owed than the home can repay? Yes. Does anybody have to repay it? No. The feds square up with the bank. So that's a great question. Yes. Oh,
I was just gonna, as
Tell
a
me your name.
geriatric care manager,
Tell everybody who you are.
Margie Arnold,
Margie.
local geriatric care manager. So here's my question. Somebody who's in their 90s, family goes ahead, they push for the reverse mortgage. Everybody wants to stay at home,
Yes.
aging in place. What happens within 6 months? The person's physical needs change to the point that all the home care in the world is not working.
Yes.
What happens?
At that point, they need to probably transition into a residential care facility. They take mom out of the home, and as a matter of fact, one of the things I'm going to address is this exact scenario. They take mom out of the home. The kids have a year to disposition the home. They're probably going to sell it. But now she's out of the home. The clock starts ticking as soon as she permanently moves. So when you know that she's exited the home the last time, you need to call the lender and say she's out of the home. The lender's going to want to see evidence of what you're doing with that home. Are you putting it on the market? Are you repaying it? Where's that money to repay it going to come from? But the kids actually have up to a year to do something with that home. That's a great scenario because
It's a very realistic.
it's a very realistic scenario. We see it very frequently. Somebody's, they have a catastrophic fall that then begins this horrible downward cascade of events, and they just can't stay in the home anymore. So yes, they're taken out of the home. Then the kids can get it cleaned up. They can sell, 60 years worth of detritus of, built up stuff, get it painted, get the floors washed and the carpet scrubbed, get it on the market and sell it. And they've got a year to do that. And mind you, they're not making a mortgage payment. Had she had a forward line of credit on that home or a mortgage payment, what has to happen within 30 days? Got to make a payment or they're going to lose that home. With the HECM, get it out of there, get mom out of there, and they can get in there and clean that home and have
The
no...
house can never go to the adult children then.
They can redeem the loan. Let's say mom during those 6 months has only drawn down $8,000 or $10,000 or something. They can pay that back. Banks sell money the same reason the apple vendor sells apples, right? For the profit margin. Only in banks, as a bank, we call it interest. So the bank is selling money for the interest. Make no mistake about it. But the kids can just pay back what's been borrowed plus the interest on that and keep the home. Absolutely. It's called redeeming the loan. Great question. Excellent question. So your question was, okay, all right.
Mine was driving down the same path. The house is sold, and whatever the settlement is on the line, the heirs take the house, the margin on the sale of the house.
Yes,
Once they
and
sell-
there's that buffer of pennies in the bottom. Kids
Right.
get the buffer of pennies. The kids get whatever's left in that line of credit. And if the home has gone up in value in that amount of time, they get the increase in the value too. The bank gets back.
If they're buying the home, if the children are buying the home.
No, if they're selling.
No, if they're selling the home, the kids get all the equity that's left in it after the loan's been repaid. If the kids are repaying, if the kids want the house, they just repay what's been borrowed, plus the interest on it. Yeah, good question.
Jennifer Brown, the Methodist Home of Forest, had a testimonial. My brother and I did this exact exercise about 2 years ago. My mother is 84. She was hospitalized for a mild heart attack. It runs in the family kids. She's in the hospital 8 days. She goes home 7 days, 8 days of 24-hour private duty, out of the line of credit, pay for the home care service.
Yes.
And
I'll actually go ahead.
Exactly how it works.
Yeah, and it's exactly how it's designed to work. I'll actually switch into a little case study here, which I like to call a story, more than a case study. But I have a borrower out west from here, very, very lovely home. She set up a HECM, home equity conversion mortgage, HECM line of credit, not because she needs that money. She doesn't need that money. She's after the growth factor. Mind you, it's picking up value. I think of it as interest. We can't call it interest because interest is taxable. and the growth accumulation on a line of credit is non-taxable, but think of it as interest. So it's gaining interest in the homeowner's favor. She knows that at some point she's going to need to go into managed care. She needs an $80,000 buy-in for that managed care facility that she has her eye on. Where is she going to get $80,000 before selling that house? She doesn't have it. So what she's going to do is take an $80,000 drawdown on that line of credit, do the buy-in, get out of the house, the kids come in, fix up the house, and sell it. She's got her buy-in for managed care all set up ahead of time, collecting interest in her favor. So beautiful, beautiful, very elegant solution to what can be a very vexing problem. If you don't have the buy-in, you're out of luck. You're out of luck in many cases. She's got the buy-in. So yes, thank you for that. That's a great example.
Could you hit upon the upper end individuals?
Yes,
and maybe
I will.
Investment advisors want planters strategically in the audience. But
Yes.
don't dominate. Just give a minute of how, if you've used, Rick, I know you're here, and my friend, name is escaping me.
Susan.
Where's
Susan? Susan.
If you've used the reverse mortgage as part of an upper end plan, and if the two, you could comment and then turn it over to Mary to see if she's used it also for an upper end, a wealthy person, if you will.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It is the fastest growing segment of my business, without question. And here's the visual picture. A lot of times portfolio managers will talk about buckets. They'll have cash equivalencies, they'll have the 401k, whatever the buckets are, life insurance. And we've all heard the bucket strategy where you do a diversification of your assets, and you're hoping if one gets whacked, then the other ones stay pretty sound. But if you start drawing those down, the conventional wisdom has been you draw those buckets down until they're bone dry, and then you go after, you tap the equity in the home. Well, the thing that part of what came out of this Avansky study is that if you leave those darn buckets in place, give them time to recover and to continue to accrue value, and instead you annuitize the home through a reverse mortgage, you live off the home until your health care costs, which is typically the biggest variable as you age, at some point your health care costs are going to outpace what the home can provide. How long does that take? A lot of times it takes 15 years to the point where your home can no longer provide for your health care costs. Your monies under management, which are doing quite well in many cases, have had 15 more years to accrue value. Now you start tapping down those monies under management. What do you leave your estate? According to one of these studies, the increase in the amount you leave to your estate, make a wild guess. Wild guess.
25%.
That'd be a handsome number. Up to 90%. Up to 90%. Because you haven't drawn these down, these high yield monies. As a matter of fact, I looked at it and thought, can't be. These are they've got 40 years of data sets to draw on at this point. 40 years. 40. That's how long the HECM has been around, the FHA HECM. 40 years worth of honest-to-God numbers that they've been crunching, and that's where they get these numbers from. So it's not just hypotheticals that they're looking at.
Do you think they increase their portfolio by 90%?
Well, that's not what I think. That's what they said. So,
Because I've
Yeah.
also read where they increased their portfolio by 25%.
and even that, I mean, even if it were, a mere 25%, that's incredible.
I was excited by
Incredible.
25%.
Yeah.
Rick, can you comment on that? And then Mary, could you give us your experience?
Sure. My name is Rick Dow, Larry Schuller. Oh, don't we sit down here? Yeah, I have a
You can stand if you want.
okay. I have a client, fairly wealthy, $2.1 million in assets, and the situation is that their previous advisor was spending their principal down, which of course over time they're going to run out of money because their expenses were approximately $80,000 a year and their portfolio wasn't generating that much. But we talked to them about doing a reverse mortgage in the down times to be able to pull out some of the money from the house because their house was paid off and had been for years, so that they were not pulling down the principal and allowing it to reestablish itself and grow. We've completely changed their entire picture. Their assets are growing in the portfolio, not to 90%, but they're now stabilized and utilizing the equity And if our portfolios continue to do what they're doing, we may pay down some of the equity back into the house if we want to. But the benefit is that they're not losing on both sides. We're not planning on using the house equity, the HECM, forever. We're just using it for a short period of time until the assets over here start generating the income we need.
Mary, what are you finding?
I think in addition to there being like a shift within the industry, I think that the shift in the industry is attributable to the shift in the mentality of people, because I'm sure I'm going to use a really bad example to make a point, because that's how I make points with bad examples. But I remember when I was in college running into a friend in Walmart and being so ashamed that I was shopping at Walmart, because I was like a poor college student who was eating ramen noodles and, you know, couldn't afford to go to upscale Target or something like that. In my head, it was like, now I run into somebody in Walmart, I don't care. I'm like, I'm getting $3 socks. It doesn't matter. I don't care. You know, you can't judge me because I have a job now and I can afford to go anywhere to buy socks at this point. That's exactly the difference between the mentality of needs-based and wants-based people taking a reverse mortgage. If you're wealthy and you're helping me to maintain my wealth, you don't care if it's with a reverse mortgage. You don't care if it's with this investment, that investment. You just want to know, what's the way that I can make my money go the furthest? And that is what we're seeing now with people who are on the wealthier end of clients. They don't care if it's with a reverse mortgage. They just want to know, how can you make my money last the longest? One example that I discussed with Robert that I only personally have done within the past year, but I know that several planners have started doing this, is the use of a reverse mortgage to defer receiving their Social Security payments. Now, I'm going to give the same disclaimer that Lori gave about taxes with regards to Social Security. I am not a Social Security expert, so please don't ask me any questions on Social Security. I'm just using this general example to demonstrate a point. Most people are going to reach their full retirement age of anywhere 65 to 67, at which point they can receive their full benefit of Social Security. Some people can choose to draw earlier. I think you draw as early as 62. The drawback to taking that earlier is the fact that you're going to get a diminished benefit. You're not going to get as much money. Conversely, you can put off receiving Social Security as late as 70 to get the maximum benefit, which would increase the money you're getting by about a third above what you would get at full retirement age. When deciding whether or not to put off taking Social Security, it's really a matter of, it really is a gamble. It's a matter of how long you're going to live. You don't know how long you're going to live. But if you're 62 and you know that you're in ill health and you think you've got another 3 years, of course you're going to draw early, because otherwise you're never going to receive a benefit that you paid into. I completely forgot to bring the statistic. I believe the age is 84 and 6 months. The exact age after which, if you live past that point, you're receiving the greatest benefit by putting off your Social Security till age 70. Well, if you only live to be 75, you've lost money, because sure, you get a higher benefit, but you've lost out on taking Social Security for a certain number of years in order to receive that greater benefit. But I believe it's 84 and 6 months. After that point, you get a greater benefit. And again, I'm not an expert, but this becomes compounded by surviving spousal benefits and things of that nature.
There's actually an industry that has developed now. If anyone's interested, just contact me by email, that does that calculation for you. Bob was at the last NALA, National Academy of Animal Law Attorneys, session that we had. That a few lawyers have developed this as an expertise to do the calculations for you, but it's very complicated.
Yeah, and
when it's advantageous, depending upon your economic situation.
Sure.
Take it at 62 or 65 or defer.
Right, and more often than not, it is going to be, the largest factor is going to be your life expectancy. Is, you know, not that we can ever know that for certain, but what some planners are doing is using, let's say you're retiring at 65. Well, you can't wait until 70 to start getting Social Security if that's a part. And for most people, for the baby boomers coming up, they're not living on Social Security. That's going to be a part of their retirement income. So let's say they're also going to be drawing down another $2,000 a month from the rest of their whatever portfolio. Well, if you put off until age 70 and you're getting a higher benefit from the Social Security, now you don't need $2,000 a month to draw down on your portfolio. Maybe you only need $1,500 a month or $1,400 a month. Okay, so now if you've put off Social Security until you're 70, whatever you have, not only is that going to last longer because you're taking less of a benefit or less of a drawdown each month, but that money is going to sit there and continue to work for you. It's going to continue to earn interest or grow or do whatever it's doing. So that's another creative use that we're seeing. To go back to what Robert was saying, all of everything that Lori and I are covering is not to suggest that there aren't elderly women and men who are in their home who just need to pay their taxes. But there are just as many financially savvy people who are presenting this to their financial advisor to say, hey, look, I don't want to take money out of these assets right now. They're not working for me. I've got a house that's sitting here, and I want to use that. So I would say that the use of a reverse mortgage to defer Social Security and the use of that bucket strategy where you've got this line of credit to tap into, it's just another way of manipulating your money.
Great, okay, so he's talking when there's an attorney in fact, we have diminished capacity borrowers. So the kids are looking at her and say, Mom is perfectly capable of staying in the home. She wants to stay at home, but she's in the early stages of Alzheimer's, but we're going to have to exercise the power of attorney. This is what I must have. I must have a doctor's letter of competency stating that when Mom signed that power of attorney, she was mentally competent to do so. I must also have a doctor's letter now that says she no longer is competent to make medical, financial, and legal decisions on her own. I have to have those two things. I have to have them. And so the thing that I've, gone round and round and round with attorneys is, please, as soon as you drop that power of attorney, recommend to your client that they go right now to their primary care physician, have the primary care physician say, I understand from my client that today they did a power of attorney, and I would like to testify to the fact that my client is medically competent to sign that power of attorney. Just stick it in the medical chart. And, for the cost of a doctor's appointment, a lot of doctors will even do it over the phone. I myself have called many, many, many doctors asking them, can I please get from you a medical letter of competency? Doctors are typically happy to do this. The problem with waiting to do it until Mom is 95, well, let's say Mom is 95, her doctor was 10 years older than she. He's been gone for half a century. He died long ago. He died under Jimmy Carter. Trying to find somebody who knew Mom when she was competent can be darn hard. I've ended up in court so many times having to get an emergency guardianship. It's not funny. And so anyway, this is not a fun process to go through for anybody. And God help the person in Maryland who needs an emergency power of attorney. So yes, and tell me your name.
Vera Valenza.
Vera, thank you, Vera. Yes.
I just had a question again about the capacity thing. So what you're saying is, because I have a specific client that I'm thinking about who executed a power of attorney 3 years ago, if her agent under that power of attorney wants to do a reverse mortgage on her behalf, the agent cannot do that now because you would have needed a letter that said that at the time they executed the power of attorney 3 years ago that they were competent to do it.
Okay, let me clarify that. I can call now. I can call the family doctor and say, can you please write a letter stating that 3 years ago when she signed the power of attorney she was competent to do so. So you can have it done right now, just looking back and saying at that date medical files indicate that Mrs. So-and-so was competent to make legal, medical, and financial decisions on her own.
But that even kind of defeats the purpose of a power of attorney.
It's irksome as heck, and I have attorneys all the time balk at this. I mean, just absolutely fuss and fume saying, look, we had to determine that it's not good enough. Having an attorney, sadly.
Specifically grants the power to do a reverse mortgage. Does that make a difference?
I still have to have that letter, that medical letter of competency.
Now, she's very strict on that. And we went round and round, and I fought with her on this topic and went north to the person, the attorney who's making the decision. And there is flexibility. The further back, like us, we get better with age. The power of attorney, the further back it is, the better off you are in terms of not having the certificate. But the escalation is if you're doing it now and you know it's going to be within a year, you're dead. No pun intended. If you don't have that letter from the doctor, you're going to have to get it. And where the rubber hits the road, what this is really about is how do they test this? It's the course you have to go through. That's what it's all about, because the individual taking the reverse mortgage, and I'm shifting on purpose. Mary, if you could talk about that.
Yeah,
Because
let me address the power of
Okay.
attorney thing, just
Yeah,
exactly.
you have to take a course online. You guys correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, it's online, face-to-face, or over the phone.
Yeah,
You can
so
do it any
if
of
if they don't have the capacity to take the course, then they can't get the reverse mortgage.
It's a little counseling session that they have to go through. The counselor asks them a series of 10 questions, very easy questions, but they have to prove their competency. And let's spin this a little different way. Let's take these same facts and spin them a little differently and understand exactly why the lender has such a high burden of proof on them. Suppose you have a drug-addicted granddaughter, and that drug-addicted granddaughter gets wind of the fact that grandma could have access to $450,000 out of her home. And so the granddaughter calls up and says, I'm power of attorney for my grandmother. Here, I've got the document right here. And we say, okay, fine. I've certainly dealt with lots of grandchildren who were the attorneys in fact. Let's see the letter of competency saying that when grandma signed that, she was competent. Well, it turns out grandma's not incompetent at all. It's the granddaughter looking to get her hands on that money. Grandma's none the wiser. Grandma's sitting at home watching Wheel of Fortune. She is perfectly competent. The granddaughter has come up with a power of attorney and wants her hands on grandma's money. What a nightmare. So the lender needs to show, okay, first of all, the granddaughter has to go through the reverse mortgage counseling on grandma's behalf, and we have to have a doctor's letter. So it's just really fencing in our seniors. It's such a vulnerable demographic, and you can see that it's rife. I mean, it's just so rife for all kinds of abuse if you're not being very careful. We're stewards in every sense of the word of these people. These aren't borrowers. These aren't case numbers. These aren't files. These are family members. These are people. They could be your mom or mine, and we just have such a responsibility to be very careful stewards over them and their money. Yes?
Lori, Irene Jackson Brown, Geriatric Care Manager at the Art of Elder Care. Had a situation several years ago with a client. Quickly, the wife had to pay for husband's nursing home care. They didn't have their estate documents in place. The wife did, but both the attorney, in fact, both had passed away. Bottom line, she had to petition for guardianship to get the reverse mortgage.
Yes.
Got the reverse mortgage. 2 months later, the husband passes away. She then psychologically wants to pay back the reverse mortgage. There was no convincing her of otherwise. And I would want you to talk about the downside, if any, in paying back. She had a line of credit. She took a lump sum.
Lori, let me with the doctrine of equal time. Mary, could you take that question? And Bob, I'd like you to comment on how you're finding courts in terms of whether they're allowing guardians to take reverse mortgages.
And I apologize because I was writing something down, so can you just repeat? I'm sorry. Can you repeat your question?
What do? You take the reverse mortgage, and then you want to pay it back, so to speak, pay it back.
Sure.
Psychologically, this particular woman whose husband just passed away 2 months after she got the reverse mortgage, they had no estate documents in place. She had to petition the court for guardianship for her husband, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
She wanted to pay it back.
Okay.
She wanted to pay it back.
Sure. I'm going to answer that, and then I'll answer the question that Robert asked about the counseling. A reverse mortgage, the simplest way you can think of a reverse mortgage is it's exactly the same as any other mortgage, with the exception that you have the option to make payments. That's it. It's a lien on the property. The property is the collateral for the loan. Before, when people were asking questions about if somebody passes away, if anybody passes away with a mortgage on the property, that has to be satisfied. Okay, so you can either sell the property or refinance the loan. Anybody at any time can pay back a reverse mortgage. And people ask the question, is there a prepayment penalty? No, there isn't. What I've always told my clients is your closing fees are your prepayment penalty, because once you close this loan, even if you decide to pay it back 5 days later, unfortunately, you're paying back all those fees. You can, if she's still living in that house, she can make partial payments, she can make full payments. What I always recommend to clients is just leave a balance of $100. And the reason I say that is because if you pay it off, it's closed out. and it's you would have to go through the whole process again to get a new reverse mortgage. If you're going to have the property, just leave a balance of $100,000, which gives you the option to borrow that money back, because she may want to pay it back and then 5 years from now have need for it. Absolutely. I also want to, and I'm sorry, I don't remember your name. Are you the one who asked the question about the power of attorney and competency? Just to kind of piggyback on what Lori had said, I've been with a number of lenders, and the lender that I'm with now, One Reverse Mortgage, and that's a part of Quicken Loans, is stricter on this issue than I've had with other lenders. And I was used to just being able to get power of attorney and a doctor's note saying that this borrower is no longer competent. It was only about 3 months ago that I literally understood why banks are so strict on it. I was dealing with a woman who was seemingly very sharp, and when I called her 2 days later, she said, I already did a reverse mortgage. Well, no, we had a conversation and that's it. And I started to question her competency, and that, of course, is a liability for me. So I spoke to the grandson who was involved, and I said, you know, really, your grandmother does not remember me from day to day. A, I can't do this. B, she's not going to be able to get through the counseling, which I'll speak about in just a moment. Well, he came back to me 2 days later with a power of attorney, because when I moved to Africa, I gave my father power of attorney to cover my affairs while I was gone. And I did it, and, you know, I got a form at Staples. Don't listen to this, Robert. I know that probably kills you. I know. I would never do it again. But I bought a form at Staples. It was like $8. I knew that I couldn't handle any of my affairs. I know. What am I doing? What am I doing? But I mean, I added my dad to my accounts, and we signed it. And, you know, that was it. Somebody notarized that they saw us both sign it. When you do a power of attorney, there's plenty of people who sign a power of attorney when they're not competent at that time. That is, if you can prove that they were not competent, then obviously that has you can't use that power of attorney, but that's the reason that's in place. To go back to your question about the counseling, I hate that word because people go, I don't need therapy, this and that. It's not anything, it's not that type of counseling. I wish they would just call it an educational or informational session, because what I always tell my clients is, if I've done my job correctly, it's literally going to be, you know, a repetition of what I've already told you. And it's basically I only get paid if I close a loan. Lori only gets paid if she closes a loan. We don't just get paid for sitting and talking to somebody. So the idea behind that is we may have some bias when we're speaking to somebody. I like to believe I don't, but I understand that other people may think that I do. So a counselor is paid either through the government or through the client, irregardless of whether or not you do this loan. So the idea is they have no kind of bias when they're speaking to you. And that is both to protect the client and to protect me as the lender, because they can't come back to me and say, well, Mary never told me that this loan has to get paid back. I thought this was free money. Well, no, there's this third party who's informing you. I want to give a really quick story.
You got 30 seconds.
Okay, long story short, I had a client in New Jersey, 2 clients, who had a in-home health care worker who was clearly physically and financially abusing them. I went into the household covered in bruises. She had power of attorney for both of them, and had another lender been in there, they may have gone and done the loan. But I took the application so as not to alert the in-home health care lady, turned her into Adult Protective Services, and saved this couple who would have had $500,000 pulled out of their house otherwise. And so that's why the power of attorney thing is so dicey, because there's just so much risk there.
Bob, 30 seconds on what are you finding when you've got guardians who want to, or really conservatives over the property, who want to take a reverse mortgage, or are you seeing that?
It's really county specific. The different judges in different counties are dramatically different. You said you had problems, and Montgomery County is great. I could get a dinner menu signed in every county. Other counties are walking there with a whip and a share and a handgun to get it done also. That's very difficult also. But it's also a lot of liability for us, the guardians, also for taking these things out, because there's a lot of upfront charges on your charge. I always thought these things were like 2 or 3 times as expensive as a regular mortgage. And financial exploiters use them all the time. I got hundreds of financial exploitation cases, but half of them involve reverse mortgages like this. Also, it's a great way for financial exploiters. So that's why they're cracking down, which is great news for me. It makes me much happier doing this stuff also.
And the cost, and Lori, I'm going to give you the last minute, okay? Now, I know both of these people, so I've warned them that I'm going to cut them short. I wanted to give them equal time if you're sensing that I'm a bit rude, which I am anyway. Lori, in the article that I read, I noticed the cost of the HECM are significantly lower than the standard reverse mortgage. Is that accurate? If you could answer that and finish up.
All right, all right. HECM, HECM is just the official government name for a reverse mortgage. HECM and reverse mortgage are absolutely the same. Under the umbrella of reverse mortgage, there's the saver product with reduced closing costs, and there's the standard with the full freight closing costs. You get more money with the standard, you have smaller closing costs with the saver. So that's the difference. What was your question?
You're done.
Okay, I'm done. All right.
Do you
All
want
right.
15 seconds to
So,
wrap up?
sure. Robert Glick, Russell Glick back here, whom I hope you all have Glickman, whom I hope you have a chance to meet, does home rehabs for people who need to redo their home to be handicap accessible. I had an incredible situation in Washington, D.C., where I showed up and I couldn't even figure out what I was looking at. The woman had had a house fire 2 years earlier and was still living in her home. No plumbing, no electricity, no heat in this home. She's a squatter in an old home that she owns outright. So what do? We called in the contractor, gutted the home, absolutely gutted the home, had the home redone. I'd pulled comps. I knew I could raise the value of this thing from the $70,000 where it was valued now to $550,000. Gutted the thing, redid it completely for $90,000. It's spectacular. Went to closing on the reverse mortgage, paid off the contractor is $90,000, and she's in this home now with a line of credit. It's a very versatile product. Like Mary, I knew I was going to adore Mary even when she and I were just talking on the phone, because it's true. I mean, you have to fight for your seniors. You've got to fight for your seniors. There's so many insane situations out there. Vera.
So what was the amount of her credit in that house?
Oh, we stuck aside a couple $100,000, $230,000 that she has in a line of credit after everybody's paid off. Yeah.
Great. All right. And the financial advisors who are here, can you just raise your hands? The financial advisors. Are you using, Susan, are you using reverse mortgages in your planning?
Yeah, I'm Susan Frederick with Focus Wealth Management. We use reverse mortgages in financial planning. I don't have any clients who have one at this point, but it's a great stable source of income, especially with stock market volatility where it is.
And Rick, are you using this, yes or no?
Yes.
And you're,
Exploring those options.
I'm sorry?
We're exploring those options.
Exploring, and you are?
Irene Tata.
Okay.
I'm
Well, any other financial advisors who are using them?
I think the point here that's to drive home, and we do not sell them here at Merrill, but we like them because they can potentially be an ace in the hole. I'm sure you guys hear about CD rates being extraordinarily low. I'm sure you hear about money markets being extraordinarily low. You're hearing these complaints. You guys know now enough to be dangerous to say, hey, at least check it out, talk to Ernie, talk to Lori. We, yes, have them in our back pocket as a potential ace in the hole for clients that might need them down the road, and also in special needs cases.
Thank you.
Kathy Hesberger, Director of Reverse Mortgage Operations at Stearns. I just wanted to share an exciting
15 seconds.
statistic. 3 years ago, 90% of reverse mortgages were all fixed rate mortgages. Because of the new adjustable rates and the equity lines, 45% are now the adjustable with the equity savings accounts. 45% are the fixed rate and 10% of the saver, and this is due to financial planners understanding reverse mortgages.
Outstanding. Ernie Castro.
Ernie Castro with Mortgage Solutions. We're a broker of reverse mortgages. We work with several different lenders. I want to respond to Steve. One of the lenders we work with has a proprietary jumbo reverse mortgage. Now, they were more popular a few years ago when properties were going up, but basically you can borrow about 35% of your home value. You have a $2 million house, that's $700,000. So if there's a $650,000 mortgage and you had a house in that range, you can get enough equity out in a jumbo reverse mortgage to be able to pay that, retire that large debt. So I just want to make everybody aware of that there is a proprietary jumbo reverse product out there.
Yeah, it's a pricey fix. I mean, the jumbo is a good product. It can be a pricey fix though because the interest rate's real high.
Got it. Thank you.